Welcome to Inside the South Florida Collegiate Baseball League. I'm Lisa Pride, and I am here today with Mike Silvestri. Thank you so much for joining me, Mike.
Thank you for having me.
Founder of the Florida Diamond Recruiting Services.
Yes.
New partnership here. Welcome to the family
Thank
with
you.
the South Florida Collegiate Baseball League.
Thank you. We're excited and looking forward to it.
All right, well, we want to remind everyone to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel here for the South Florida Collegiate Baseball League. We appreciate all the subscribers. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. So, Mike, we're going to dive right in.
Okay.
What intrigued you to partner up with the South Florida Collegiate Baseball League?
Well, I think it was a number of different things. First and foremost, we've been sending players that are clients, and whether they were graduating high school and starting their freshman year in college, or freshman year going to sophomore year, so whatever it may be, we've been sending clients to the league since we started. Now we're only been in business since January of 2022, but I always knew that this was a good league. I knew some of the people that were involved, like Nick Presto and some different people that were involved, and so it was a chance for knowing what the league was about and what it does for players. Then started kind of figuring out too that there may be a role that we can help with the league, and that really has to do with obviously what we'll get into a little bit with the the college landscape and the changing and the transfer portal, and maybe how we can assist with that. And that's kind of what brought us here today.
Yes, you've been here in the South Florida community over 30 years.
Correct.
Involved in baseball,
Correct.
High school, college, a scout for Major League Baseball organizations.
Yep.
You have seen and done a lot here in the recruiting process and just baseball overall. So the credibility is definitely there. And then taking all of that knowledge that you have and putting it into this recruiting service. So it's really exciting to be a part of the South Florida Collegiate Baseball League now, to have you with us.
Thank
What
you.
can the players expect? What can the league expect as far as the recruiting services that that you will help them with?
So I think the first and foremost thing is we understand the process. I've got 7 guys on staff. The backgrounds we have with our advisors are phenomenal, from over 890 wins with a retired Division II coach in the Northeast to I want to say it's 5. It could be 4 World Series rings on staff, from the scouting side to college head coaches, high school head coaches, pro players. Everyone's got a background that's multiple levels. There's always a pro background and a collegiate background tied into this. So the way things are evolving with the nature of college summer leagues, and it's a direct reflection of the transfer portal, which is here to stay, and it's something that's has benefited the players and colleges since its inception. What we're going to be able to do is provide a very clear path for a player who may be entering who is in the transfer portal, for that matter, and how to get themselves proper exposure, how to put things in a very clear and concise manner. We have this college player profile page that'll have everything from who they are to their analytic uploads to their years of eligibility, their NCAA ID number. Kind of a one-stop shop for a college coach to be able to find out who that player is in literally less than 2 minutes, including relevant video and what team they're playing on and their upcoming game schedule, and really provide a very clear and concise path, not only for the player, but for a way to the league to kind of track what's going on as well. And then from there, if the player decides that they need a little bit more of a personalized approach, we have those options available as well too. From a consulting standpoint.
It's great to have that hands-on too, because it does get confusing. It gets really nerve-wracking, and the players are trying to figure out what their next step is, whether they're in the portal or coming out of a junior college or something like that. So there's so many ways that you can help the players then here in this league. And what really sets you guys apart, do you feel, than other recruiting services?
I think the number one thing that we do a really good job with, because of the backgrounds, is the ability to evaluate the player from the onset. And I think or know that look, at the end of the day, the supply of player, and that's been proven over the last few years, is greater than the demand for the player. There's just more players out there looking for opportunities, and opportunities are out there. So I think our strength right from the core get-go is who the player is and what level they can help contribute to win immediately once they get on campus. Because if we're looking at the wrong levels, usually that would be too high of a level. If a player feels that he's a Division I player and he's looking at that, whether it's a P4 school or a non-P4 school, and that's not really the case, then the levels he should be looking at, those opportunities are fewer and far between as well, are going to dry up. So our role, if someone decides to use us above and beyond just creating their digital player profile page and wants our consulting part, our role is to nail that evaluation from the get-go, and then really time is of the essence with the transfer portal and finding a home over the summer, going after the right level of play immediately.
Yes, that's so valuable to the players. Talking to a lot of the different players throughout the summer in the South Florida Collegiate Baseball League, they needed that help too. They kind of, they were in the portal, but not really sure how things would end up. They had to definitely reassure their parents too, that don't worry, it'll work out. But that's something too that you can offer and, be the guide there for parents, for families, that, not just the athlete, where it kind of rest everybody assured, and have all your services in one way. And I think that very relatable, since you've had your own, playing sports and in college too.
So it's interesting because, you look at the amount of players that were in the transfer portal, then you look at the extra year granted of eligibility for a player who played, for example, we had a potential client come to us last year who had played 2 years of junior college baseball, 2 years of NAIA baseball, but got that 5th year with that new court ruling. And in this case, the player felt like they were a Division I level player. We didn't see that. And there's nothing wrong. Everyone's entitled to an opinion. The player's opinion wasn't wrong. Our opinion wasn't wrong. What we did agree to was we're not a fit for each other. And if we were looking to pursue one option for that particular player, this player was looking for another option. So again, it's this core group of guys that I have and what we're able to do, because everyone has this experience with us. And it's the only reason why I'll onboard somebody who wants to become a recruiting advisor with us is the background's got to be credible, the ability to evaluate's got to be credible, and especially when we get to the transfer portal, and you're looking at how many thousands of kids were in the transfer portal last year that are still not on a roster, and careers may potentially be over at this point unless they're able to take that gap year depending upon their eligibility level and years left to play. It's just finding the right level of play, assuring the player that we know the clear path. It's not just about posting to Twitter or Instagram your updated stats or anything. Now, that player profile page that we have is going to really simplify things for a player if they choose to do that. And it's somewhere where a college coach will be able to go click on our website, go to our college player portal, and look and see exactly from the South Florida Collegiate Baseball League who is in the transfer portal and has decided to utilize that college player profile page option and say, okay, I'm from ABC College in North Carolina. I need a catcher, I need 3 right-handed pitchers, a left-handed pitcher, and an outfielder. Let's see what this league has in particular, and then kind of match it up there and really get through the process in 2 minutes or less for one player in one spot. So it's going to simplify it for the college coach as well, which at the end of the day does exactly what we want, benefit the player.
You make it sound so easy.
It's not easy.
Well, you make it sound easy for the players and for the coaches, so that it's going to be an easy process. It's not an easy, going through the whole process, but the way that you've simplified it, the way that you've set up the website, the way that the service works, it sounds like it's something that is easy for the player and the families to be able to load things in, get help from you, get those services, that you make the process easy. And then also then on the coaching side, for the coaches to click and see, and get exactly what they want, what kind of players they want. So that the service, it sounds incredible that what you have. Will the players that the South Florida Collegiate Baseball players past this summer be available or
Absolutely.
eligible to use these services? And I'm definitely sure going forward, that'll be something great for all the players that are joining the league in 2026.
Absolutely. And one thing when we first came over here and sat down with Bill and Nick was he brought up the idea of, hey, guys who've maybe even exhausted their eligibility, they've played their 4 years, they're done, but they're still looking to keep the uniform on. And with today's draft only being 20 rounds, there's fewer opportunities in organized professional baseball, right, to play for the Giants or the Marlins, minor league affiliates. Is there something that we can provide for our guys if they want to use this option and sign up for this at a kind of a low cost alternative to promote themselves to an independent league? Because that's going to become more of a viable option to keep the uniform on for guys, and then maybe they get picked up with an organization a couple years down the road. So we actually have that as well, where that'll be part of the program where former SFCBL player wants to, they've played, they came here a couple years and they finished at ABC College and they still want to play, they didn't get drafted, and they need to find a way to market themselves to the multitude of independent leagues out there. They'll be able to utilize these services as well.
And then as far as a player family here in the South Florida Collegiate Baseball League that has a younger brother or sibling, then you also have services where, helping the high school level too. So you're helping at every single level there, high school, going to college, then the collegiate level, and also, beyond.
It's what my morning, for example, my morning started out exactly this way today. I woke up, I had my coffee, pet the dog a little bit and sit down in the chair. And the first thing I did was take a player profile page from one of our local high school clients and send it to a junior college in the state of Florida, and also send it to a four-year college in the state of Florida. And it's that player profile page that's got everything. And I made it very clear because we just developed this in June and tweaked it again in July. So we're exactly where we want it to be. And I explained to the coach, I'm like, this is the breakdown of the player. I'm not here to tell you, that's not my role. I'm not here to tell you, hey, this is here's what I think of the player. Here's what I know of the player. I've seen this player in person in the case of this high school player. But click on this link. You're going to get everything you need, including his social media links that are all clickable. So you can stay on this page, click on his Twitter account, which we have all of our clients always keep their Twitter accounts recent, see some updated recent ABs or whatever he is, a pitcher or whatever it may be, and then still scroll down, see his academics, see his upcoming schedule. And within 2 seconds, I had one of the coaches, well, actually both of them, get back and say, I'm calling the kid. In the case of these schools, the JUCO, I'm calling for a workout because they're allowed to do that. Just let him know that I'm going to be reaching out to him today. And that's the simplicity of, he got everything he needed from the player, about the player, who his parents are, school, in 2 minutes, and didn't have to go anywhere else to find it. So it really simplifies it for all involved.
And that just sounds exactly what people need right now. Like you said, because the landscape and the way that baseball is now at every level gets very confusing. Yeah. Well, we're going to take a quick break. We want to remind everyone to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel here on the South Florida Collegiate Baseball League. And also, we will talk about some sponsors coming up and talk with Mike more about the Florida Diamond Recruiting Services and also his involvement with baseball. Today's podcast is being sponsored by MD Now. Do not let injuries slow you down. MD Now has over 110 locations across the state of Florida. You'll get the best care from our award-winning physicians to get you back on your feet. Thank you, MD Now, for taking care of the South Florida Collegiate Baseball League athletes.
This is Mike Silvestri, founder of Florida Diamond Recruiting Services. We have a tremendous staff of recruiting advisors with unparalleled credibility. Whether you're a high school player, JUCO player, or looking to enter the transfer portal, contact us today for a free consultation at www.fldrs.net.
Welcome back. Don't forget to like and subscribe here on our YouTube channel for the South Florida Collegiate Baseball League. Well, I am with one of our new partners here in the South Florida Collegiate Baseball League. Welcome to the family. We've been talking to Mike Silvestri with the Florida Diamond Recruiting Services, and it's been a joy listening to everything that you are providing for the South Florida Collegiate Baseball League family here as far as recruiting, the services, what they need when the guys are in the portal, when they're looking to go from junior college, to a four-year university, whatever their next steps may be, including, family members, high school baseball, players, and probably you're going into softball now. That it is called the Florida Diamond Recruiting Services.
Kept it that way.
So you can go into, so is softball, will that be in your future?
Yes, we are actively talking to some credible, qualified people to potentially start up our softball division, and the website's ready to go, as far as being able to handle that, and we just need the right personnel like we have on the baseball side. So we are in the process and looking forward to that.
And you talk about the right personnel. I know you touched a little bit upon all the experience that you have on the baseball side here with your recruiting service. Yourself, we mentioned, 30 years here in the South Florida baseball community. That started way back. You came in as an assistant baseball coach in high school, moved over to a head coaching position, and then into college. How did that all start? And as far as, I'll brag a little bit for you, okay? As far as, coming in and right away involved in programs at the high school level, state runners up, but also getting players, in the draft and Major League Baseball in the draft and being signed by major league organizations, let alone having players sign and go on for their collegiate career. So how did that all get started? And, really what a great career that you've had, and that evolved then into scouting for Major League Baseball teams.
Correct. So really, it started with the opportunity was afforded to me with a former, which doesn't really, they don't have too much of it now, but back then the big thing was American Legion baseball. And a guy that I played American Legion baseball for, and I played against him when I was a kid, offered me an assistant coaching job, coming out of college. Ironically, that coaching staff changed, and the new guy who I didn't know decided to keep me on, and it was coaching the outfielders at Miramar High School in 1992. That team, and I still talk to a few of those guys to this day. Actually, one of the players, Sons of West Palm Beach kid, and we're assisting with his process in the college recruiting process, which was awesome. That team wound up going to the state championship. And I think it's the first and only time ever in school history as Miramar High in baseball advanced to the state championship. From there, I was afforded an opportunity to take over a storied program at Monsignor Pace High School in Miami. Kind of had fallen a little bit on hard times. So I decided to go over there on a 2-year deal, be the assistant for 1 year, kind of observe, and then take over the next year. And we went from my assistant year, I think we were 13 and 14. The following year, took over to go 22 and 7 as my first year as head coach. I brought back that old American Legion coach as my mentor, and Carl Andrietta. He's still coaching high school baseball today over at University School, and he was our pitching coach and kind of my confidant. I leaned on him for a lot. I was young, 25, 24 years old, and brought back a Hall of Famer from the school to be on staff. I thought that was important, and then kind of pieced the staff together from there with some really good baseball people. Our starting catcher in 1995 is the recruiting coordinator at UCF today. So we had some good baseball people coming through the program. At the same time, as a young guy, I founded what was I didn't know a better name. I called it the North Dade Summer Baseball League, and we took 14 or 15 high schools from South Florida and formed a summer league for these kids to play in. There was no travel baseball back then. It was just kind of getting started. So it was a way to keep our kids involved in our programs in a structured environment. I contracted out the officials, the umpires, the league, and we did this on basically a no-cost basis so the kids could play and continue to develop, and you can see what your team was looking like for the upcoming school year and so on. Wind up finishing up at Pace after 5 years as a head coach. Knew it was a time to maybe take on a different challenge. My last team in 99, and it's a credit to the players, to the coaching staff, the school, obviously, we had the most drafted players in the country by Major League Baseball for a high school high school team. We were back-to-back state finalists. We lost in the championship both years in 98, 99. And I think off those two rosters, it's somewhere between, I lose count sometimes, 15, 20 guys were eventually drafted off those two rosters from their sophomore years on that were on the team at the particular time. A bunch went on to play college baseball. One of them on that 99 team was my third baseman. He's involved in my business. He's my right-hand man. He's also involved in professional baseball as a cross-checker himself. So there's a lot of history that goes back into, how this all got started. But wound up going to Broward Community College, and that was another chance to rebuild. It wasn't as big a rebuild as the high school. I'm sorry, it was a bigger rebuild than it was for the high school. I got there with 3 scholarship players on the roster. One of them I had actually cut from my high school team. But the challenge was great. It was the right time in my life. The wife was great about it. My daughter was she was in a stroller at the time, by my second year there. I would literally sit in the back of a pickup truck at the old Homestead Collegiate Baseball Summer League, which doesn't exist anymore, and sign players out of the back of my pickup truck with a letter of intent as they came off the field to fill a roster. And we got competitive that first year, and I was only there a short, brief period of time. I left right before the start of the year 3 season, which was a tough time to leave, but we wound up having over 30 drafted players with that team. And I think that last team's group wound up holding the number 1 ranking in the country for a number of years. I kind of left that roster intact for the new coach. Never thought I'd get involved in pro ball. It wasn't something I was looking to do. I thought I'd stay in college coaching, but it kept coming up. So I said, okay, in December of 01 and started in January of 02, and here we are, moving through doing the domestic side to becoming an East Coast cross-checker and then eventually director in Latin America, and now as an international cross-checker as well. So it's been quite a ride, yeah.
It really has. And when you talk about it in that way, you see how that you really do understand this recruiting process from every level. And you learned it early on in your career, having the high schoolers getting drafted or, being looked at and going on and playing collegiate league. So then you started to understand how that recruiting process worked. And I know it's changed a lot over the years, but coming from that background right there as a coach and being a part of all that recruiting process just right from the start, I'm sure is, giving you so much wealth in that because you see it from both sides then too. And then you said going into the collegiate area where you went to Broward Community College, and then so a little bit even closer, having the older players there, understanding, what their needs were at the junior college level too, and that, transitioned you into becoming a scout for Major League Baseball organizations. So now you have that. So all of this has just led to where you are right now with the Florida Diamond recruiting services and just having that immense knowledge.
I think one of the things that helps too is when I did the domestic side for the first 10, 12 years of my scouting career, actually longer than that, I was able to see all levels of college baseball because the players come from everywhere. It could be a Division III program, like the PSAC conference up in the Pennsylvania area. That Division II program is phenomenal. And I remember cross-checking that when I was with the Angels and going to their conference tournament. There was draftable players there that you needed to see as a cross-checker. So, and then having our guys who are on our staff have also had those experiences. So when someone, even when I was a junior college coach and a player would say, I don't know about, maybe, have you seen us play? Have you seen the state of Florida junior college or California or wherever it may be? It's a little better than you may think it is. So we have those experiences to draw back on. And I think that's what helps when we target a player and say, okay, here's who you are today. Here's who we think you're going to be tomorrow. And what our focus has changed since we started this business in January of 2022, formally as a business. I've been doing it for 30 years, but formally as a business it used to be, we need to find that home for 4 years. And if you're good enough and you get drafted as a junior because you're eligible or you're 21, that's a different case. Major League Baseball doesn't miss. Like, if you're supposed to play professional baseball, you will. But I think our focus has really changed where the projections of the player have to get shorter. Now it's when you walk on a campus, can you help that coach win a game from day one? And that's the difference of the transfer portal. That's the difference of the game getting a little bit older at the collegiate level. So the physicality concerns come into play and all that type of stuff. And we're on top of that and aware of that as we move forward with where our clients are going to fit. Can they help that coach win today? That's the key question.
Yeah, you're evolving as the game is evolving, as the as baseball is evolving, the recruiting process is evolving. So just a little bit more about your background too. You probably get a lot of stories that people want to know. Oh, you were part of the Mike Trout signing, or here locally with Sean Rodriguez. And what are some stories that people ask you the most, or that you can share?
Yeah, I can talk about Sean. I mean, Sean, when I was a high school coach, I would work University of Miami camps all the time in the summer and Christmas time, and I'll never forget, we had so many kids at camp, and Coach Morris was like, we have to add another station, like a rotation, to blow the horn, and we're like, what about a mental skill station, like the mental side of hitting in the third base dugout? And it was a former major leaguer who was also a alumni, and me. And so we have these, Sean was so advanced as a young player. His dad was a college coach and a minor league coach and so on. He was 10 at the time, and we have this third base mental skills, and we're talking about what you look for in certain counts, and and he's with like high school kids, and the first kid to raise his hand on every question was Sean. Well, I like this count because I can look for this, and you're looking at this. Like, he's 10. He's in 5th grade. But yes, fortunate to draft him in 2003. And obviously he got to Anaheim, and at one point he had over 30 home runs in AAA when he was called up, and so on. So that was a neat experience, and he got his 10 years in at the big league level, and I think he's helping out the Phillies now in Clearwater as a special advisor, and then getting eventually promoted as an East Coast cross-checker and being fortunate to be involved in the whole Mike Trout drafting and signing, and we were just in a really good spot. Our area scout played with his dad in the minor leagues, so we had a little bit of an in or a lot of an in. Greg did a great job. Greg was a Hall of Fame player at the University of South Carolina and a former first rounder himself. So we had a lot of background heading into Michael's senior year. And, by the time Jupiter finished, which is coming up here shortly, the Perfect Game tournament, when Jupiter was done, I might have had 58 at-bats, if not more, on Michael just sitting there watching his Tri-City State or Arsenal team, whatever his travel team was called, just watching from a golf cart by myself. So then when the snow melted and it was time to go see everybody in New Jersey, and he was from Millsville, which was kind of closer to Philly, and it was a rough winter. It was just a matter of just going to see him because we had to write our report after seeing the player play in the spring. And then it was just assessing the competition, like who's on him behind us, who's on him in front of us. I always say to this day, I had to give a speech in front of ownership and the GM and our major league manager and in Anaheim 2 days before the draft, and I didn't have a player comp on him because that's one of the things we do in professional baseball. Who does he remind you of that played in the big leagues? And I said it was a right-handed throwing Ricky Henderson because Ricky threw left-handed, or it was a non-switch hitting Mickey Mantle. And I remember our GM at the time saying, "So you're saying he's a Hall of Famer?" And I'm like, "Well, that's what we're supposed to do is dream, right? That's the whole point." And then having to, make sure my numbers weren't so crazy high because, like, you got a big number on this guy. Like, it gets like a little embarrassing. Like, I've never seen anything before, and I've never seen anything like it. So, but that was we don't get him without our area scout, Greg, because he had the ins and outs, and that's all he talked about for 12 months before his draft year. So it was a great experience. Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds like it, and that's something exciting that
Yeah.
I'm sure people ask you about
They
a
do,
lot.
yeah.
And you talk about Sean. Were you ready to, sign him when he was 10?
Yes, at that point.
It sounds like he was.
If I was a
ready.
scout, I'm like, that's the best baseball mind here. Yes, and then I'll never forget taking my cross-checker at the time, who I'm still we actually worked together in Atlanta after the Angel years as well on the international side. And I took Mark very late in the year. There was the GMAC tournament, which was done at FIU, and it was like the top 4 or 5 teams from Dade County would have this almost mini playoff before the real playoff started to crown the GMAC champion. And Sean was hitting off a tee. And I remember Mark saying, "That's the best bat speed on the East Coast." And I'm like, he's got a donut on his bat. Like, he had a weight on his bat. And that was the thing. Like, Sean's bat speed was so electric. And the tools were so good. And he was a student of the game. And it was just a matter of when, not if he was going to get there. It was just if he stays healthy, he's going to get there. And so happy for him and his family that because he's a good person. Got a chance to reunite in the break when he came over as a free agent. And sit in on some of those talks when he was coming over as a free agent from Pittsburgh, I believe, when I was with the Braves. So it's great to see him and him do well and be able to provide for his family. And he's a good guy and he's a family person. So really neat experience overall. Yeah.
I worked with the Palm Beach Cardinals when Johnny Rodriguez
Oh,
and his
yeah.
dad was the manager
Yeah.
there, and he was so proud of his son, and it was so much fun to keep updates with him. Okay, like, what's Sean doing? Or, I saw Sean do this, or so it's just a really small community here in
is
the
very-
South Florida
we're all
area.
intertwined, yeah.
We are really. What about a success story that recently then, as far as with your, with the Florida Diamond recruiting services, what's something that, that's really stood out for you?
So I think one of the things that was, the first 2 clients that came to us were teammates of my son in travel ball. My wife had finally convinced me after we had talked to one of her friends and she needed some guidance and had hired another agency, never came to me. I didn't have the business at the time. And I'm like, why didn't you come to me? Everybody else does that I don't know. And when she left the house and I had given her some advice on what to do moving forward, even though she was with a long time national company, just gave her some very specific advice to follow. My wife said at that point, she's like, will you put together your guys and a staff and be able to pick and choose who you want to help in a business format and structure this? And that's when I did it. And she put the announcement on Facebook. Like, I didn't even form the corporation yet. And two kids from my son's travel teams immediately called and had hired another service and we need help. And both those guys are just finishing their college careers today. Sony, and actually one of them played in the South Florida Collegiate Baseball League as a 2-way guy here coming out of his freshman year in college up at Skidmore. I think one of the neat stories was going up to New Orleans, and I go there every Thanksgiving time. A friend of mine does a hitting camp, longtime recruiting coordinator at Miami and Arizona State and LSU, and a pro coach with the Rangers, and I go up there and I give a little talk, and then I'll have a workout for any kids who may be interested. And this one player came walking in the stadium, and it's Mikey Stadium up in Metairie, Louisiana. And I looked at him and I'm like, you look like Hunter Pence or Drew Stubbs. Like right away, that's what came to me. And he's like, who are they? He knew Hunter Pence, but didn't know Drew Stubbs because they're young. And he was entering the really neat part was he was so humble. He was November of his sophomore year. And I looked at him and I'm like, you're going to play in the big leagues. And he's like, I'm just trying to make my high school team. And I started laughing. I said, let me tell you something, Ryan. I said, my last high school team in '99 was top 20 in the country. We had the most drafted players in the country that year by Major League Baseball. I don't know where you would have played, but you would have been somewhere in that starting 8 position player-wise. And he's like, really? He wound up being an all-state player that year and a 3-time all-state player. He's at Arizona State now. His dad still calls. I still keep in touch with him. If I'm out in Scottsdale, doing some spring training work or something like that, we'll get together. Hopefully that'll happen this coming fall. And I think that was one of the neater stories because he was one of those kids when I said, we always ask our guys to come up with a list of schools. For him, I said, I don't care if it's the Omaha list for the last 10 years. Tell me where you want to go, and we're going to make sure that we get you in front of those people because you're that guy. He didn't realize it, but we did. Like he was just, those guys are different, and he's different. So it was neat to see how the whole thing transpired with him. And his dream school was Arizona State, which is not normal for a Louisiana kid. But I don't know what the connection was, a vacation, the story program. And he's now in his freshman year at ASU, so and thriving and doing well.
Well, that's exactly what, as far as partnering here in the South Florida Collegiate Baseball League, the players are looking for, your great advice like that, your help, your recruiting services, your scouting, ability, everything that you bring in that way, let alone, being a really personal connection because you are here in this community and have been involved in. So just wrapping it up here today, as far as the state of baseball right now, very confusing, in the collegiate level and as far as recruiting, the portal, how do you summarize all that and how do you help people make sense of what's going on?
It's, I don't know, controlled chaos, I guess would maybe be the term. It's honestly, I think it's one of my bigger roles right now with the company is, I think it's my job to stay on top of how everything is so fluid. Whatever legislation may be coming across, how things are changing, what coaches are looking for, what they're not looking for, how do we adapt that to fit our clients, and how do we adapt that also when you send a player to a coach as a recommendation, you want to make sure that what you're sending is coming as advertised. That's the biggest term I can use all the time. I use it in scouting. If I have an area scout come to me and ask me to see a player as a cross-checker that I currently am, I always just, he has to come as advertised. If he's this, then he needs to be this. It doesn't mean he has to perform exactly like his performance we can't control, but the variables we can control, he has arm strength or he runs this well, the better come as advertised. And I think because of the way we have the transfer portal involved, we have, look, there's probably legislation coming across where it's going to go from 5 years to play 4, right, to maybe 6 years to play 5. I see that coming. How's that going to affect, what does the 34-man scholarship rule mean in reality for all schools and explaining that to parents and then also explaining how things can get portrayed in social media that may not be. So it's an ever-evolving process. It's my role. It's what I do from the time I wake up in the morning, and if I'm on the road, I do my job on the road as far as an international cross-checker. At night, I'm going to, sit there and do some more research and make sure I'm staying on top of this landscape that's changing, and that's calling coaches, and that's reading, and it's absorbing, and a lot of it's just using my network. And whether it's Division I, Division II, Division III, JUCOs, like, guys, tell me what's going on. Like, we know in December the junior colleges are probably going to get some spinoffs from kids who didn't make that December 1st 34-man cut at the D1 level. If they got freshman, sophomore eligibility, that's probably going to bolster a junior college. So how does that affect our client that we may be trying to get to a junior college? So it's an ever-evolving process that requires a lot of attention.
Yeah, it's so important for you to stay on top of that and everyone else, but you make it so much easier. What's the best way I know that we'll have some graphics but for everyone to reach the service for the Florida Diamond Recruiting Service and reach out to you and find out more information?
So I think the easiest way is our website guy is phenomenal. He's got a baseball background. He's got kids that play that are prospects and local guy. has been a huge asset. And I think the contact form that he's developed on our website is just so simple. You just go to www.fldrs.net. You can click on Contact Us. The form it goes right to our customer service inbox. I will see it. And then we just set up a free consultation call from there. And, usually what we'll do is, it's today's day and age, if I see the player's name, I'm going to research some video. It's out there. So I get a feel for what I'm going into. So I can kind of talk about my potential evaluation of that particular player and then hear some of the circumstances of that player and family. And then we kind of go from there.
Sounds great. We welcome you so much here to the South Florida Collegiate Baseball League. And thank you for joining us Inside the South Florida Collegiate Baseball League. So Mike Silvestri. And don't forget to like and subscribe here to our YouTube channel, the South Florida Collegiate Baseball League.